Hello and welcome to episode 73 of Linux After Dark. I'm Joe.
I'm Chris.
I'm Gary.
And I'm Dalton.
Welcome back, chaps. I have in my hands an Asus Eee PC 901 that I once upon a time gave to extended family and have only just got back, and it was running Ubuntu 12.04. That's how long ago this was given away and seemingly never updated. Surprise, surprise. And it is just the coolest little thing. But it's a 32-bit Atom processor in there. It's got 1 gigabyte of RAM. I think I might be able to upgrade it, and I think I might have some RAM, but I can't find my screwdriver to check. But anyway, what am I going to do with it? And don't say recycle it. Don't say throw it in the bin. Don't say stick it in the stack. What am I going to do with it?
Well, I recently rediscovered my Eee PC 701, so very similar machine, and I played with it for about 10 minutes and then put it on the stack. So I'm going to say play with it for 10 minutes and put it on the stack.
To be fair, the 901 is significantly more powerful than the 701. I mean, in relation to modern machines, it's not much different, but the 701 I think is completely unusable, whereas this, I did briefly boot Bunsen Labs on it, and it was all right. It was only using like 100 megabytes of RAM in the live session.
So in terms of modern supported in-maintenance operating systems, it's a dwindling list now, isn't it, right? Debian?
Yeah, although I couldn't install that. I tried it twice and it just failed. So I don't know what went wrong there.
Oh. But there's no Ubuntu.
No.
No Fedora. There's not very much left. And as we've discussed before, if you open a web browser, it's going to be on its knees, even with one tab.
Yes, I did do that and tried to go to fast.com and it was in the kilobytes per second. Not because of the network interface, but just because it was just struggling so hard.
But they are natty, aren't they? When you sent a picture in our little chat that we have, the form factor. I actually have a colleague who, when he started 18 months ago, was carrying one in his coat pocket on the tube. And he got out like in the first week and I was like, oh, wow, what are you doing with that? And he's like, oh, it's handy for SSH. The battery lasts a long time. If you're purely in the CLI and you are remoting into something with a bit more grunt, it still has utility. And it is cool. It's like almost the size of a Kindle. It's fatter, obviously, and whatever, but you can slip it in a larger coat pocket.
It'd have to be a pretty damn big pocket to be there.
Well, good news. You're a man. You have pockets.
I put Batacera on one that I had and turned it into a natty little retro gaming machine. And bearing in mind the CPUs that were in the consoles of yore and the amount of RAM and everything else, it will do 16-bit. I mean, maybe even PlayStation, but I didn't try that.
Who cares about that? As long as I can play Mega Drive / Genesis games.
Oh, absolutely.
It will handle that a treat. Yeah.
Aha. You might be onto something here. Yeah, maybe I'll do that with it.
You could have the entire library on the SSD, like...
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, legally.
Yeah, you can get your ROM replication and get all of those Mega Drive ROMs out of your wardrobe. That's what we mean, Dalton, isn't it?
Yep, yeah, right.
So I did an INXI-B, and it came back reporting 80% health.
For the battery?
That cannot be true, the battery being 80% health, surely.
If it's been stored well... Aren't you supposed to store batteries at partial charge, right?
Yeah, like 60% I've heard.
Yeah, so if it's been stored with partial charge and it hasn't been cycled, if the cells haven't degraded just naturally of old age, then I can believe it. I mean, the thing is, the batteries that start to go, either it's bad luck because the cells are bad, but also if you're working in an office environment and going in and out of meetings, you're going to be yanking and joining your USB-C power supply. And often people dock now. That's how you connect the display. So you have no choice. You have to sort of do those BIOS thresholds or user space software thresholds to stop the battery from charging at certain percentages and massage that. But I think we thrash batteries a lot more now than we used to. So I can believe it. I can believe that it's not that bad.
Yeah, I have machines from the late 90s where I still get 1.5 to 2 hours of battery life out of them. So I don't think it's beyond the realm of possibility that it's at 80% health.
Right.
It doesn't suddenly die while it's discharging or anything, does it?
Well, I haven't got that far yet.
Oh,
I've only just turned it on, like today.
What was the battery life in hours when it was new, roughly, on a machine like that?
It's hard to say. A couple of hours, maybe.
Right.
Maybe more.
We'll wait to hear back from the Roaring Fire video playback test or something. You can run it through with a stopwatch.
Well, normally, I set up my script, my ACPI script, to just write to a text file every minute and report the battery level. And then I put Sky News on live stream, which is just a 24/7 YouTube stream, and full brightness, and see how long that lasts. But it's not going to play Sky News on YouTube, is it? Let's face it.
It might play it at like 144p, yeah.
Yeah.
Find the lowest quality that it doesn't resemble a PowerPoint slideshow.
Because it is a very low resolution screen is the thing. It's not even 720p, is it?
1024 600 or something, a lot of those
Something like
machines.
that.
And it's at 7 inches diagonally.
I think so.
No, 9 on the 901.
Oh, yeah, because it's instead of the speakers being in the way, yeah.
But yeah, you're going to have to find something that is, as they say, a GEOS. So Batocera, which is just the kernel and then a minimal UI, or sticking to terminal workloads. Yeah, I mean, you could probably do basic office tasks on it, but you're not writing a book, are you, at the moment, or something? Like, it would be a good distraction-free mechanism. You know, you can download those applications that lock your computer into a certain kind of text editor or something. This would do that because it's not capable of doing anything else.
Yeah, but the keyboard is so small. It's just comically small. It's actually not that bad to type on, but I would not want to write a book on it, believe me.
And surely the touchpad is also tiny, right?
Yeah, it's surprisingly all right. I mean, it's tiny, but it works fine. And server-wise, it's not really any good because it's only got 100 megabit Ethernet, I think. And it's only got USB 2, so I can't even do a USB 3 to gigabit Ethernet adapter.
But USB 2 is good enough for your Mega Drive USB reproduction controllers, so...
Oh, yeah, for the gaming stuff, but for something like properly Linuxy is what I was hoping, but maybe not, because it's 36 watts is what it says on the bottom of it. So that's when it's using max power. But with the screen off and stuff, it's probably going to be less than that, isn't it?
Yeah.
Another big limitation is that it's only got a 4 gigabyte SSD. It has actually got another SSD that is 12 gigabytes, but that is significantly slower and you do not want to install the OS on it.
Is that upgradable, replaceable?
I don't know. I never looked into it when this was my actual machine.
They still sell mSATA SSDs and stuff, so you could certainly get something else if you wanted to spend money on it.
I do have an mSATA SSD in one of my other machines that I could put in it, but then I'd have nothing for the other one, so probably a bad idea. But this machine holds real sentimental value to me because this is what I learned about Linux on. Because I had my desktop at home and then I had this, which I was able to just treat as the stack of laptops now, basically. I could just install anything I wanted on it and it's got the SD slot, so I had it booted from that. And I wouldn't be here talking to you without this machine, I don't think. So the thought of throwing it away it just pains me.
It's very funny going back in time, Joe, and reading the copy that surrounds it. In order to expand the collective 12 gigabyte Mega hard disk volume, Asus offers a possibility to save up to 20 gigabytes online by YoStore. The early days of offloading to the cloud with an incredibly small amount of space by modern standards.
What I should try and do is track down an image of Xandros that it came with and see what that's like to use on it.
Even back at release, 480p video can only be admired as single pictures. That's the quote.
Maybe I'll install Windows XP on it and maybe it'll be better. I don't know if I can get the drivers.
Well, it's funny you should say that because I just posted in our chat a Reddit thread where someone is doing the exact thing you wanted to do. They are watching Sky News in 240p on YouTube in Windows XP.
I mean, can you point VLC at it or something? Will that work? But, well, it doesn't have hardware decoding of anything, does it?
Nope. It's earliest Atom, isn't it?
Yeah, there's not going to be any quick sync or anything like that here.
Until GMA whatever the hell.
945.
The SSD benchmarks are quite significantly terrible, aren't they? I'm just reading 31 megabytes per second.
Ooh.
Oh, you could run Linux on a Nintendo 64 emulator on Batocera. That's Linuxy, right?
Okay, this episode is sponsored by people who support us with PayPal and Patreon. Go to linuxafterdark.net/support for details of how you can support us too. Patreon supporters have the option to listen to episodes without ads like this. And it's not just this show. There's Late Night Linux for news, discoveries, audience input, and misanthropy, 2.5 admins about system administration, Linux Matters for upbeat, family-friendly adventures, Linux Dev Time about developing with and for Linux, Hybrid Cloud Show for everything private and public cloud, and Ask the Hosts for off-topic questions from you. You can even get some episodes a bit early. We've got a lot going on, and it's only possible because of the people who support us. So if you like what we do and can afford it, it would be great if you could support us too at linuxafterdark.net/support. So what's the oldest machine that any of you are actually using in any sort of production?
I think it's the one that I'm talking to you on, the Surface Pro 5. That's 2017 vintage? 2016?
So like a 6th gen i5 or something?
It's 7th gen, I think, but yeah.
So that's like 7 years old.
Yeah.
Ish. I was about 2011 for my router, but the Wise 5070 curse has booted that one out. So, I mean, I have machines, but they're not in production in the stack. But yeah, I'm not going lower than 8th gen, I don't think, for anything, or the equivalent Celeron of the era.
Well, in this case, I guess I win because I've got an E5 1620 V2 Ivy Bridge machine that's still in service, albeit that I rent it from OVH. But that runs a bunch of stuff for me still.
Yeah, but you're not paying the power bill for that, are you?
No, I think they're probably losing money on it because I think I pay something like $20 a month for it. So they're definitely losing money.
Yeah, I think my oldest has got to be an 8th gen Intel. My XPS 13, that is my bedroom machine. For when I wake up and realize, oh shit, I spelt something wrong in the show notes, I need to edit it quickly.
Yeah, ashamedly, the oldest thing that's in use in my house is an M1 Mac Mini, and that's not really that old at all.
What? A lot of people would love to have that machine.
Yeah, it's now in my garage running my Plex servers.
Does it do all the transcoding and everything then?
Yeah, that all works perfectly on the M1 chips. So that's why it's there, because it basically uses no power.
Right. In macOS though, boo.
Yeah, and trying to get macOS VNC working was a journey, let me tell you.
Because that 8th gen, especially for laptops, is quad core, the prices have fallen. I've acquired machines to swap everything out. So basically everything has 4 physical cores on it now. And it is starting to feel painful to go back. I do have like a laptop with a busted screen that I'm now running a VM cluster on for practicing work things, because it's less about grunt and more about concepts. So each VM is tiny and it's about VM management, not what the VMs themselves do. So shuffling them around and scheduling tasks on them. And the tasks are just like printing the time, because that's not the point of the exercise. It's not encoding video or encoding MP3s. It's getting 4 or 5 things to run tasks as a cluster. So that's the aim of it.
I think my parents have a ThinkPad T450, but even that's got 16 gigs of RAM and, just it kind of still eats.
Yeah, I have a feeling, Joe, it's going to be a nostalgia trip, and then it's going to go on the stack and then down a level of the stack and then down another level of the stack.
First in, last out.
I gave mine away on Free Cycle and someone cycled like 2 miles across London to come and get it. So if you're going to make the effort, I said, yeah, it was running Raspberry Pi OS in the end because I imagined a kid would end up with it. And, it is about as powerful as the older Pis, a netbook.
Yeah.
So you can get Scratch going on it and gcompre, various things for younger kids would run. But yeah, I don't know. I can't give you you should definitely do this with it cool use case.
Well, it means that I can finally get rid of my Aspire 1 that someone gave me 10 years plus ago. That is similar, but doesn't work very well at all with Linux. So it's just been a bit of a nightmare. Whereas at least things work nicely with Linux, even if they're very slow on this EPC.
I think it's difficult, isn't it? Because even if you install that horribly stripped down Windows that came with those netbooks, they weren't even performant in the era. So you can't even install it as a nostalgia trip. It's just an exercise in frustration.
Well, if I can find the drivers, I do have Tiny XP ISO, which was like made with Nlight, just everything stripped out. You wouldn't want to connect it to the network, but just as a nostalgia trip, I might do that at some point if I get bored enough.
Actually, it might not be that bad to connect to the network because it won't have anything running and listening.
Yes,
that's
this is true. There's no AI in XP.
Yeah. How was I going to upload my screenshots?
There was actually a video that went around recently of XP and Office in the XP era. And it was just someone holding their hand up for everything that appeared because it was so snappy. And obviously for us, you know, if you're an XFCE user, but even the supposedly bloatiest desktop environments don't feel that laggy. But if you're a Windows 11 user, co-piloted up to your eyeballs, running Windows XP and loading Office is going to seem like a lightning trip, isn't it?
What do you mean I hit the start button and the start menu appears?
Well, what I did find with those machines, Joe, when I was playing with mine, was that they're such cult classics that pretty much everything you could need in terms of restore ISOs for Xandros or the XP drivers and everything else is all on archive.org at this point. So
excellent.
It's super easy to find.
The worry about giving it away is that it just becomes pure waste, though, isn't it? The first thing you said was just, recycle it. As I showed when I gave mine away, someone cycled miles to get it. And it feels a bit weird, doesn't it? But that's my instinct, is to be like, oh, can you tell me in a few months, whether you actually used it?
Did it go to a good home?
Yeah, you come across as such a creepy weirdo if you say that to some random that's collected a laptop. But that's what I always feel like. I don't want to feel like I've given it to someone and they've gone, oh, this isn't Windows, and just chucked it in the bin a few months later.
Yeah. Imagine what that's like with cats that you fostered. You've looked after this cat for a couple of months and then it goes off to its new home and then you just never hear anything. It's terrible. But it's probably worse to send someone off with an EPC and then never know if they chucked it in the bin or not. I think the nostalgia I have about this EPC is because it was such a fleeting thing. You had laptops before then and after then. And yeah, they've got a bit thinner and lighter and whatever, but they're ultimately the same form factor. And you've still got desktop PCs. And then tablets and phones came along, and tablets and phones have not changed in the last 15 plus years. But there was just this very short period around about 2007, 8, something like that, where these things came along and they were just this special thing that only existed then. A frozen moment in time almost.
But there was also such a community around them. There were forums specifically for the EPC and forums specifically for the Aspire One, and images you could download for special versions of Windows or Linux that someone had spent their time optimizing to get running absolutely perfectly. Or someone had got Windows 2000 running on the E701 and found that it was X amount quicker at this specific task than Windows XP was. And you just didn't really get that with tablets and other things that came afterwards. You just get a computer, and there aren't thousands of people with the same general purpose x86 machine anymore in the same way that there were.
That actually reminds me of the early Nexus days, before the Pixel came along, the heyday of custom ROMs, where everyone had a Nexus 4, everyone had a Nexus 5. It's sort of that same kind of nostalgia for me.
Well, yeah, it was the heyday where everyone had an E701 and this guy modded a touchscreen into it, and then everyone found what part that was and modded a touchscreen into theirs, and then someone else found a GPS module that would fit if you dremeled away a certain piece of plastic, and then they made a car. That stuff just doesn't happen anymore. That's not going to happen with my ThinkPad Z13. It's just not going to exist.
It's definitely not going to happen with an iPad, is it?
No, absolutely not. I mean, that already has GPS and a touchscreen, but
Let's not forget as well that there was actually an Ubuntu netbook edition, and not just a hobby project. It was a canonical project. So you're right, Joe. They captured a moment so much that Canonical thought this is worth pursuing. They collaborated with the Moblin project, I think, to actually target the hardware, because they were all using these Atom processors because it made sense for the form factor, and the aim was, portability and battery life way ahead of performance. But yeah, Unity had a netbook layout, and then it ended up just, folding back into 1104 and we were gone. But there was definitely a moment there where it was around 2010 where they were really, really popular because they were quite cheap and people were buying them a lot.
Well, not to mention, it was one of the few times in history where I could walk into PC World and have like 5 different choices of a Linux machine. Like, there was the EPC with Xandros. There was a Toshiba one that had Ubuntu on. I think HP even had one with SUSE on at one point. Like, there was so much choice of going in and buying a Linux machine. Couldn't do that now.
Well, we'd better wrap it up. But if you've got ideas for what I should do with this brilliant old machine, then do email us, show@linuxafterdark.net. We'll be back in 2 weeks, but until then, I've been Joe.
I've been Chris.
I've been Gary.
I've been Dalton.
See you later.